Everybody joining me this week on the show. We are previewing the Auburn Tigers, and joining me to do that is Taylor Jones, the managing editor of the Auburn Wire, which is part of USA Today. And Taylor, appreciate you taking time, come on the show, talk about these Auburn Tigers.
Hey, Phillip, always a blast joining you. Always a blast talking Auburn sports with you. Hope you're having a great off season so far. And hey, it's not too much longer before we actually get to see some football and not just talk about it.
What off season?
Yeah, exactly. Especially in the SEC, that doesn't really exist. But yeah, a lot of excitement so far for the Auburn team. It's just one of those things that SEC Media Day comes and you think, okay, we're finally here, and then you have to wait another 2 months. That's kind of the rough part, but plenty to talk about. A lot of good things going on with the Auburn program, and looking forward to chatting about that with you here on the show.
Yeah, and you talk about the excitement. I mean, Auburn sold out season tickets. Of course, not counting the student season tickets, but still selling out. The most they've sold since 2014, which of course we know that was coming off the 13th season where Auburn got all the way to the national championship game but lost. So that right there just says the excitement, what Hugh Freeze has brought to the program, brought that excitement back. And it kind of feels like, Cadillac started that last season when he took over as head coach. And then now with Hugh Freeze, what he's doing, a complete opposite feeling from the Auburn fan base with Hugh Freeze versus what was there with Brian Harsin.
Yeah, you're right about that. And I feel like it took a little bit more time than Hugh Freeze would have liked. And you mentioned, the Cadillac thing, him coming in and almost leading Auburn to a win over Mississippi State, and then getting those two wins in the middle, including one over Texas A&M, which I think when we really look back is a pretty big deal, considering the expectations that Texas A&M always seems to have, and the fact that Cadillac was able to lead the team to a win that really helped. Of course, got the big win over Western Kentucky and played tight with Alabama there for a little bit. And, luckily for Auburn fans and for Cadillac also, he was able to stay on staff. So that helped a lot. And I think it really bodes well for just how good of a job that Hugh Freeze has done trying to, promote what he's about and what he can do for this program. Because if you remember, a lot of people, when it was between, Lane Kiffin and Hugh Freeze, when the talk was about that before Hugh Freeze is ultimately hired, a lot of people didn't really like the idea of having Hugh Freeze coming to Auburn because of his past with Ole Miss, and several things that happened at Liberty as well. And I felt like he knew coming in that he had to build the trust of the Auburn supporters, and he found a way to do that by getting out in the community, talking with fans, which is something that Harsin did not do, by the way. Recruiting has gone a lot better. In the last couple of years, a transfer portal haul was great. The end of the recruiting period last year in December was fantastic. So I know he's put a lot of faith into these guys, and in turn, a lot of Auburn fans are seeing what he's doing and respect that a little bit. And that's, of course, turned into season tickets. And I saw a story somewhere where somebody quoted the season ticket story and them selling out over 63,000, which is something that's never happened before. And they said a lot of that was because of the season ticket allotment for opposing fans not really being as high as it usually did, but good on the Auburn fan base to actually scoop up those tickets as well. Because a lot of those times you go to a game and there's a lot of empty spots because fans return tickets and Auburn fans don't jump on the opportunity to get them, but they jumped on the opportunity here. And I think it's also a good thing too, because they're supporting the team with also not having as high expectations as Auburn usually has. When you have to play Auburn or Alabama and Georgia every year, it's a bit of a challenge in order to, feel like you need to win 10 wins. You need to get the top recruits. But the fact that they're willing to give Hugh Freeze a shot, and Hugh Freeze in turn is willing to show what he can do to make this program what Auburn fans expect it to be, really says volumes to what Hugh Freeze has been able to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it really does. And it's that first game when they play UMass on the second, you know, sorry for them. They're about to run into a hornet's nest that they're probably not expected to in that first game when Auburn runs out on the field for a time. It's going to be exciting because they couldn't show that excitement at A-Day because of the weather. The weather was, so this be Hugh Freeze. I mean, I know he's been to Jordan Hare, But I kind of would like to ask him maybe after the season or after the game. I would, if I had a chance, I'd say, how did that feel? Because that first time you're the home coach on the sideline. Because look, I've been at Jordan Hare when Auburn's good or when and just even relevant. I mean, they're really good and not maybe not great. That place is loud, especially at
Yes.
night. I saw a 20. I don't know if you saw. I posted this on Facebook or not, but 24/7 put out their rankings of the top places in the country. I had LSU at number one. I have no issue with that. I had Auburn like 7 or 8, and I had Bryant Denny at 4. Like the only reason why that place is tough to play is because that team has a bunch of 5 stars. It's not because the half empty stadium there in the second half
Yeah, it's
of
like
games.
I don't understand how you can say that's a top 5 environment when you don't have fans for the second half because you're up 45-0, and that's only because of like you said, the blowouts the team puts out. But you think of some of the other great environments too. The Swamp when Florida's good is
Mhm.
incredible. I mean, I don't know if it's because I'm used to Jordan Hare, but going to the Swamp and watching Florida play when they're a pretty decent team is the loudest place on earth. I went to South Carolina a couple of years ago, and that place severely underrated. That place is incredibly
Mhm.
loud, especially at night. They get sandstorm going, and everybody loses their mind, and they stay that way the entire game. Mississippi State with the Cowbells, Neyland when it's up, Clemson when they're playing a pretty good opponent. Really good places. And of course, I don't think no matter if LSU's 1-11 or if they're coming off a national championship bid, Tiger Stadium at night is unmatched. A lot of people like to say that Texas and Oklahoma, are pretty big too. I guess we'll figure that out in the next couple of years. Um, but yeah, that's one place that as long as Auburn is doing well, then it's going to be loud. I can remember going there, 2012, and getting $5 seats to watch Georgia. And that's you can't do that now. I looked at
Mm-mm.
ticket prices now on the secondary sites, and the lowest one I found was $160, and that's like at the very tip top of the upper deck. So I mean, that's unheard of that you can just get a ticket for $5 to go watch Auburn, Georgia. And that's not really the case anymore. And I think that's not going to be the case for the while as long as Hugh Freeze can find a way to continue building on the momentum he already has. Really, the only thing that we have to wait on right now with Hugh Freeze is him actually getting out there and coaching. And I think it's going to be just as fun as it is watching him recruit and watching him speak to the media as well and try to talk up this program. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jordan Hare bumps up those rankings by the time we talk about it next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that they should. But let me move off that because I got a little bit too triggered when I saw that online about a week and a half ago. I was like, who made this list? But anyways, so before we jump into this year's team, 2024 schedule, that was a big topic of debate at spring meetings. I don't know if you an 8 game or 9 guy person. I'm for 9 games. I would prefer the 9 game model where you have 3 permanent opponents and you rotate the 6, not the 8, which they're going with just for 2024. I know they said that could change after that, which I think that's got some money with ESPN TV contract money
Oh yeah.
stuff tied into that. But where were you at on that conversation?
I see it from both ways. When I look at, the fact that Auburn doesn't have to play as many SEC teams, that's nice. It's also nice to have 4 non-conference games. That way there's more wiggle room to schedule, a Clemson or schedule a California like they're going to play this year. And I don't know if these games will be affected, by the 9-game schedule if it were to happen, but UCLA's coming up, Baylor's coming up, Miami's coming up. Those are the games that we know of for sure that have already been scheduled. So I like seeing, SEC teams play really good Power 5 conferences outside of their own league. And with the 3-game schedule, I don't know if we're going to see that as much, especially in the, what's technically the SEC East for this year anyway. Florida has to play Florida State. Georgia has to play Georgia Tech, Tennessee, or Kentucky and Louisville. They're for sure not going to get that opportunity. Georgia doesn't have that opportunity here in 2023 because they were supposed to play Oklahoma, but because of the SEC schedule, they said, well, we're going to halt that series before it even gets started. So now they're having to play Ball State. So of course Georgia's the laughing stock of that because of what
Mm-hmm.
the SEC told them to do. And so I'm afraid that if SEC does go to a 9-game slate, that we're going to lose that, and it's just going to be one more opportunity to, have another challenging game on the schedule. But what I really do like is the fact that Auburn can play Florida once every 3 years. Auburn can play Kentucky once every 3 years. Auburn can play the new kids, Oklahoma and Texas, once every 3 years instead of, Florida not coming to Jordan-Hare since 2011, or Auburn and Kentucky only playing 7 times since 1990. Like, that makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I welcome the opportunity of being able to, see some of the old SEC Eastern teams. And of course, the Missouris and the Oklahomas and Texases. So I welcome that for a 9-game schedule too. But if I had to pick one over the other, I like the 9-game slot better, just because I actually saw a video on Twitter the other day that kind of brought back memories, the 2001 Florida game. And that was the game where, I had watched college football but hadn't really picked a team. And my grandmother said, well, come watch Auburn and Florida. It's a, night game in October. It's raining. It's cold. I'm having a good time. I watched Damon Duval kick that field goal to put them up, and they beat number 2 Florida. And I said, I'm going to be an Auburn guy. The rest of my life. This is what my life is going to be like, because I'm going to ride with Auburn. And so I think of, every time I think of the Auburn Florida game, like, I wish we could see more of that. And every other Auburn Florida game since 2001 has been incredible. A lot of weird things have happened. A lot of good things have happened, both good and bad for Auburn. And I wish that we could see a little bit more of that. And, just like the whole Kentucky thing too, I just think it's, kind of strange that Auburn and Kentucky haven't played that much. And the fact that, Auburn and LSU, a lot of people were talking about, I don't want to lose LSU for the, in 2024. That's a big thing. But Auburn has more history with Tennessee than they do with LSU. And you wouldn't know that because Auburn and Tennessee have barely played each other since, I guess, the mid 2000s when they went with the new schedule model. So I like, being able to, see teams in the SEC more often. So the 9-game schedule is more, what I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just the recent rivalry with LSU. I was telling a buddy of mine today, I said he's an LSU fan, so I'm going to kind of miss that. But, but he threw it back at me and said, well, they'll just have to play each other in an SEC championship game. That's just how that's going to have to go. But
yeah, I'm sure I know LSU and Florida fans would probably like the, turning them off, once every couple of years. Because I know with, can't remember who I talked with a couple of years ago, but they kind of like brought down why Auburn is in the SEC West and Vanderbilt's in the SEC East, because they wanted to split the Big Six. LSU, Alabama, Auburn, they wanted them all in one division, and then they wanted Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia in the other division. That way one division's not power heavy. And so, so that's, why Auburn and LSU play so much more, but it's just, it's, and LSU, Florida, of course, had to deal with that because Alabama, Tennessee, you can't, talk about those two teams without mentioning the other one, Auburn, Georgia, deep South oldest rivalry. And now it's like, well, the other two members of the Big Six have to play each other, and neither one of them wants to do it. And so I think they will probably welcome the change a lot more than most will.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gonna be interesting. We'll see. It's gonna be weird not having divisions, which I'm actually for that too.
Yeah,
as well.
I kind of like that too.
Now let's look at the 2023 team. We've gone about 14 minutes. We haven't even jumped into the 2023 Tigers yet. And last time we talked, it was right after 8-8. So Peyton Thorne had not got to Auburn yet. He had not even I don't even think he was in the portal yet when we last talked. What is your initial thoughts and just your thoughts overall since the end of the addition of Peyton Thorne to the Auburn Tigers?
I felt like it'll boost the quarterback competition a lot. What he did in 2021 at Michigan State, I really liked a lot. Threw a lot of touchdowns. He was able to rush a little bit more. Led the team to a Peach Bowl win against Pitt. So I thought, I know he can win. The big thing now was just a lot of uncertainty with, can that adjust well to the SEC? And I think you're going to see that a lot with between Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford as well, because if you read several of the preseason publications, you've got one that says, Peyton Thorne's definitely going to be the guy, and here's where we're going to rank him. or no, I don't see him beating out Robbie Ashford because Robbie Ashford has a year of experience at Auburn, and he also went through the spring with Hugh Freeze. So a lot of people feel like he has an advantage right there as well. But just a lot of uncertainty on both sides of the ball because you don't know what Peyton Thorne's going to do against SEC defenses, but at the same time, you don't know what Robbie Ashford is going to do with a revamped offensive line and
Mm-hmm.
different receivers to throw to. So, a lot of people that aren't really so high on Robbie Ashford may change their mind if he does end up getting the job. But Peyton Thorne, the one thing that I do want to see a little bit more of if he does get the job, I want to see what he does on his feet. Speaking with one of our Michigan State editor over at Spartans Wire, reached out to him immediately and said, hey, do you mind if I just ask you a question on, a couple questions on Peyton Thorne? And I said, what's one thing that's underrated about him? And he said that he can actually move, but his injury last year in game number 1 against Western Michigan, I think is who they played, kind of slowed down his production. But he does have wheels. He just hasn't had the chance to really showcase them yet. And I feel like his arm speaks enough for itself. His running ability, I feel like if he can prove that over here in summer workouts and once fall camp opens, I think Auburn fans are going to be pretty excited about what they see in Peyton Thorne.
And I think, and they should. And then and a couple weeks ago, I did an article at Last Word looking at Hugh Freeze's history with quarterbacks. You look at Arkansas State with Ryan Apple, and then Bo Wallace, and then Chad Kelly. Then not as much Malik Willis, but from the passing yard standpoint, those guys were throwing for 3,000 yards. Chad Kelly probably would have one year. He didn't because he got injured. And that's the interesting thing with here. What we're going to see, I think Auburn fans are going to see a lot more of the passing attack than what they're used to from past. Because with Brian Harsin wanted to run the ball. I mean, they threw it a little bit with Bo the first year. We know what Gus wanted to do, and previous coaching staff too as well. Even back to Tuberville was run first. All that. So I think that's going to be a big thing too when we look at Hugh Freeze and then Montgomery too there as offense coordinator. It's going to be a different looking Auburn offense than maybe what they're used to because of Hugh Freeze, his past with developing these quarterbacks.
And I think that's really going to help with the receivers that he's brought in as well. You've got the leading receiver coming back in Javarius Johnson. I feel like he's going to be a great leader in that locker room. But the biggest steal, I think, and I don't think it's just because of, one thing or the other, but the fact that they got Shane Hooks from Jackson State and that he didn't go to Colorado. And a lot of people are thinking, oh, well, was he even that good? Did Deion Sanders even want him? He was the leading receiver at Jackson State, and he decided not to go to Colorado. He decided to come to Auburn. So that speaks volumes. I'm excited for him just for that, that he was able to, be Shedeur Sanders' top target, and he decides to come to Auburn. So I love that addition. I feel like he's going to do well. A guy that not a lot of people are talking about, but he's a big presence in Nick Mardner from Cincinnati. He was, I think, second or third for the Bearcats last year in receiving. But you have, two quarterbacks, or one that we know can throw in Peyton Thorne. Would like to see a little bit more opportunities with Robbie Ashford to throw as well. But I think Hugh Freeze adding so many great receivers to help those quarterbacks out will definitely do wonders. I don't know if we'll see a 3,000 yard receiver or 3,000 yard quarterback just yet, just because of the adjustments and all that. But it wouldn't surprise me in a couple of years if we do see one, just because of what Hugh Freeze has done to help them reach that. Offensive line should be greatly improved too, thanks to the transfer portal as well. So Hugh Freeze is going to do whatever he can to make sure his quarterbacks are successful. So where all they have to do is throw the ball, make great decisions, because you've got a great supporting cast around you. And so, I think passing the football is ultimately going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm excited to see how he and Phillip Montgomery as well do with developing those passers.
Yeah, and I was looking at too, and just kind of looking at Hugh Freeze's past at other places. This is the best group of running backs he's ever had. I mean, obviously, we'll see what happens with the status of Jarquez Hunter. But you got Brian Batty there coming in from South Florida, explosive player too. I'm really intrigued to see how they actually do use him on offense. Sean Jackson, you got Damari Alston coming back. I think Hugh Freeze talked about him a lot after the spring game. You got freshman Jeremiah Cobb coming in. So that's another thing, too. The Hugh Freeze teams are known for passing, but obviously at Auburn, it's one of the top historically teams, universities when it comes to running back. He's got plenty of running backs to use too.
Yeah, he does. You mentioned getting Brian from the transfer portal, but when you look at what he's got coming in next, who knows what they're going to do with Jeremiah Cobb? Is he going to get a handful of carries? Are they going to let him get a couple of carries in those 4 games so he can still redshirt? Got Jamarian Burnett coming in right after him, a class of 2024 commit. But yeah, we talk about the passing skills, and the reason why quarterbacks are throwing so well, or one of the reasons the quarterbacks are throwing so well for Hugh Freeze, is because Hugh Freeze, in his time at Arkansas State, at Ole Miss, at Liberty, and hopefully this will change at Auburn, has never had a 1,000-yard rusher. And that is incredible. It's strange to think of, but at the same time, it really doesn't. It's really not all that surprising, because I can tell you who his top receivers were at Ole Miss. I can tell you who his top quarterbacks were at Liberty. I can tell you about what Ryan Applin did in his 1 year at Arkansas State. I cannot for the life of me think of one running back that I associate with Hugh Freeze. And that's because, he hasn't had that one back that has stepped up and has rushed for 1,000 yards. And I think with Auburn's situation right now, and again, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with Jarquez Hunter, but if Auburn doesn't have a 1,000-yard rusher, no matter who it is, I feel like something's going to be wrong because of the talent that they have and the supporting cast that's around them. Brian Battie, he's already, proven that he can rush for 1,000 yards. He did that last year at South Florida. And we actually had a writer from Tampa when he transferred. And a lot of people that he knew that went to USF were kind of angry at us for taking him away from South Florida, because he was like, that's the only good thing we had last year in Tampa. And of course, unfortunately, the Jeff Scott experiment didn't work out, even though he had great offensive success at Clemson. But yeah, he's very fast. He's going to be a great returner if he doesn't get a lot of carries in the backfield. Damari Alston's proven that he's ready. Sean Jackson surprised people at 8A. That was a guy that I didn't think much about going into, but he stepped up, had a great 8A as well. So Auburn's got a stable of backs that I know they're going to be trusted with. And I'm going to go on a limb here and make a prediction that Hugh Freeze is going to have his first 1,000-yard rusher. Now, it may be, Trey Mason in 2012 where he gets 1,002 yards. But I feel like this is going to be the year that he gets his 1,000-yard back. And if he doesn't, it's because the backs have been mismanaged. And when you have a running backs coach like Cadillac Williams, that's not going to happen. I don't see that happening at all.
Yeah, you that position is going to be well taken care of, and that's probably
Absolutely.
if you wanted to judge which position gives the most effort, they're all going to give effort. But running backs, they're what we saw at Cadillac when he was the head coach last year. There's no excuse there. Hey, they need to be running with their players that are on the field. Like Cadillac was doing. Run down the field, run down the sideline. Don't do like who was it? Was it Zach Etheridge? Was it last year that he blew out his leg as he was running down the field with Cadillac?
Yeah, that sounds about
which I know Hugh Freeze talked about that when he took over the job. It said he'll let Carnell do that. He won't be doing that. He said he won't be running down the sideline.
If we have to keep you in the booth to prevent you from doing that, we'll for sure do it.
Hey, Hugh Freeze has coached from a hospital bed before, so
he has. It wasn't a great game, but he was there.
Oh yeah. So look at defense. Defense had a lot of issues last year, and I look at it, and I look. The secondary's got a lot of experience. At cornerback, Nehemiah Pritchett. Some of the preseason magazines have him listed as the most talented Auburn Tiger on the team, or from a draft standpoint. DJ James is back. The safeties, Jalen Simpson, Zion Puckett's back. But I look at this team. My biggest concern is quarterback pressure, because it doesn't matter how good your secondary is, how experienced they are. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, eventually somebody's going to get open. Linebacker, I think, is also, I'm worried to see where that's going to go. What do you think about this Auburn defense?
Yeah, I think secondary is not going to have a lot to worry about. Nehemiah Pritchett, DJ James, of course, are going to hold that down. I'd see at the end of the season DJ James being the defensive MVP. Because I know that a lot of people didn't really get to see him grab a lot of interceptions, because he only grabbed one last year, and that was the pick 6 against Western Kentucky. But He was always at the top at tackles. He didn't miss a lot of tackles last year. Nehemiah Pritchett has, been great the last couple of years. Jalen Simpson, trying to look a little bit more with Zion Puckett to see if he has a more improved season last year. Not a bad season last year, but when you look at some of the things that are important in defensive backs, there's certainly numbers that he could improve upon, including the percentages of targets thrown his way and how many receivers have actually caught those passes. I'd like to see that go up a little bit more. The edge rusher, I'm excited about seeing because of the potential of two transfers. One, of course, being Elijah McAllister, coming in from Vanderbilt. Learned this about him this week. He's got 2 degrees from Vanderbilt, and he's working on his doctorate while he's at Auburn. So he's a very intelligent man, knows what he's doing, a great head on his shoulders. Looking excited for him. But another guy, a spring addition, that I think will also have a great opportunity to really disrupt the passing game is Jalen McLeod from Appalachian State. I did something a couple of weeks ago looking at Pro Football Focus data and who were the top defensive players for Auburn this year. And that was a mix of players that were on the roster last year and a mix of new defensive players that come in. Jalen McLeod was the top. He rarely missed a tackle last year. His highest graded effort was the pass rush. So a lot of people may not know him now, but I think if he gets a great opportunity, Jalen McLeod is going to be another, underrated guy that we'll see. So I'm excited for McAllister, also excited for McLeod. Defensive line is going to be really interesting too. You got Marcus Harris coming back, the most experienced defensive lineman. Messiah Nasili Kite has been named the most underrated SEC player to transfer into the SEC. So I'm curious to see if he can live up to that hype as well. But defensive secondary should be fine. Edge rush, I think there's a lot of questions right now, but maybe, week 2, week 3 after they play California and right before they get into playing Texas A&M, maybe those questions will be answered. If not, maybe they're, will have at least some semblance of trying to get better. Linebacker is going to be pretty interesting too. You've got Cam Riley coming back, but also Austin Keys looking to fight a spot. Steven Sings, another guy that knows Hugh Freeze and some of that staff well from his time at Liberty, is going to be trying to work for a spot too. It's going to be a mixed bag, but I think it's going to get figured out a lot quicker than the defenses of the last 2 or 3 years have gotten figured out.
Yeah, you mentioned that Cal game, so I was going to jump into the schedule for a little bit. I was September, 5 games. There's 5 Saturdays in September. Those first 3, you got to be 3-0 in my opinion. That Cal game is huge. You win that, you go out there, you win that. We're going to stay up late that night.
Pac-12 after dark. Get ready.
Yeah, or no, we're going to steal that. It's going to be SEC after dark that week. That's going to be that's what's going to be like. So I think that game's big because you got UMass, we talked about earlier, then you play at Cal, then you get Stanford. You start 3-0, that's huge because you got Texas A&M. You go there, and then Georgia's after that. It's key. I mean, it always is important, but really key for Auburn. That 3-0 start, I think, is a really pivotal thing for them.
It will be a great thing for momentum too. And I mean, you got to think about the number of miles you have to travel just in the month of September alone. 2 games, but I mean, that's well over. I mean, I haven't really done the math yet. That's probably something I'm going to work on over here in the next couple of weeks is the amount of miles that Auburn will have to travel. But, all of their SEC opponents this year, west of them, they've got on the road at LSU, on the road at Arkansas, on the road at Texas A&M. They've got Vanderbilt, which is technically west, but not as far. And then, of course, you've got to go, across the country to California over in the Bay Area. So, I mean, that's, you're looking at 5,000-6,000 miles, just in that. And 2 of those games are coming in the month of September when you go to Cal and go to Texas A&M. I think that will be pivotal. And I think the most important game of that month will definitely be when they play Texas A&M. And I'm going to be a believer of this until they prove me wrong. But Texas A&M has not won 10 games under Jimbo Fisher. And I feel like, just like the brand new SEC member that we're going to see next year in Texas, there's a lot of hype coming in, but by the end of the season, it's not where it should be. 2012, I think, was the only exception because no one expected them to be good in the SEC in their first year. kind of, dwindled away in 2013 and on with that. But I think Texas A&M may be 3-0, and that's going to be a must-win game for Jimbo Fisher. And if Auburn can do historically what they've done, which is win and have success in Kyle Field, then Auburn fans are going to be excited. Texas A&M fans are going to be done with Jimbo Fisher, which I didn't think would ever happen because of what he did at Florida State and what he's done as an assistant coach at LSU and at Auburn and all these other stops that he's made. But that's probably going to be the most pivotal. Going to have some momentum going into the Georgia game. Who knows what's going to happen? They've got a lot of talent there, but I don't think their quarterback situation has gotten figured out. I mean, I think they kind of know who is going to be their quarterback. It's going to be Carson Beck, but you've also got Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton as well that are trying to, have their say in the quarterback battle. And if Carson Beck's not getting the ball to his receivers or if he's not making good decisions, they could have some quarterback controversy going into Game 5. And if Auburn has momentum hosting Georgia, it may be an interesting game before they have a week off and then go to LSU. So if they can get as many wins as they can before they go into LSU, then the better off, everyone's going to be, the happier that Auburn fans are going to be, the more confidence that Auburn players are going to have. So if you start 3-0, I feel like you have to start 4-0 for people to really start believing that, hey, this Auburn team is pretty serious. But I agree, the first 3 wins are the most important. You've got to have momentum going into Texas A&M because you have no confidence going into Texas A&M. Playing at Kyle Field's not going to be fun for you. So you got to find ways to build confidence. I mean, you don't have to win every single game 58-0, 59-0, 72-0. But you have to, show signs that, hey, we are improving. We believe in our coach. Our coach believes in our players. And, fans are going to be loud for Game 5 against Georgia. So if you start 4-0, the better this season's going to turn out.
And before we jump into just real quickly on looking ahead at SEC Media Days, I'm looking forward to the game on October 21st when Ole Miss comes to Auburn because of the stuff that Lane Kiffin has said on Twitter toward Hugh Freeze, because of everything that happened toward the end of last year where people thought Lane Kiffin was coming to Auburn. He was going there. So I'm sure the Auburn fans will have that sold out Jordan-Hare Stadium will have some words and some stuff for Lane Kiffin. I think that's going to be a very intriguing matchup just because everything that happened last year. Of course, like I said again, Lane Kiffin's had some little jabs at Hugh Freeze, since he got hired at Auburn. So I think that is an underrated SEC matchup for this season.
Never would I ever want Auburn to play an SEC team away from Jordan-Hare Stadium. That is a game that I wish was at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium because not only do you have, Auburn going in and playing Lane Kiffin, but you have Hugh Freeze coming back as a member of the Auburn Tigers. That would be fun. But I think, bringing Lane Kiffin into Jordan-Hare Stadium is going to be just as fun. There's going to be 20 to 30,000 more people there than there would be at the Vault. But yeah, that's going to be a very interesting game. I'm looking forward to that too. And, I don't know, I haven't really examined all the other top games around the country that week. But I would really enjoy seeing College Game Day on campus for that week, if not at least SEC Nation, to hear some of those guys, talk about the matchup and the press conferences that week are going to be a lot of fun because, Lane Kiffin's going to say something. Ole Miss and Auburn fans are going to be barking back and forth. Some of the Alabama fans that still have a soft spot for Lane Kiffin are going to be barking at Auburn fans. And we didn't want him anyway, and he loves it here at Oxford. Why would he ever want to leave? And, it's going to be a lot of fun. Their quarterback situation is a mess as well, too. They bring in 2 really talented transfers, but everyone still says that Jackson Dart is still going to win. And I feel like that's, a situation in itself to watch for, that if you don't have confidence in your quarterback and you bring someone else in, and yet the quarterback that you didn't have confidence in is still the starting quarterback, that just doesn't seem like it's a fun atmosphere there too. So who's going to be the quarterback for Ole Miss in that game? I don't really know, but if that's a game that Auburn can manage to win at home, that'll be a lot of fun. I can remember the Ole Miss game 2 years ago when Auburn won that game over Lane Kiffin's bunch it wasn't Halloween. I think it was Halloween weekend that they played, and just how fun campus was that night, and how fun the stadium was, that night as well, mixing in that with the Braves clobbering the Houston Astros in one of those games. So you had the student section
Oh,
not
yeah.
only cheering for Auburn, but they're doing the tomahawk chop in the student section as well too. That was just a fun night. And I don't know if it's going to be a night game. Hopefully both teams are playing well enough that it will be a nighttime primetime game and not a 11 a.m. kickoff on SEC Network. But it's going to be a fun atmosphere, and who knows what those two are going to say in their press conferences leading up to that week. What kind of stuff is Hugh Freeze going to say? Because I know he's trying to build up his reputation now, so he hasn't really taken shots at people. But I feel like if he kind of gets to a certain level, a lot of people are going to expect it. Lane Kiffin's going to have a couple of backhanded things. So it's going to be a fun week here in the state of Alabama and the state of Mississippi as well whenever that game comes up.
Definitely. I told you 15, 20 minutes. We've hit 35 minutes here on the clock. So we're going to close it up with this. SEC Media Days is next week. And the day that we're recording this on Monday, announce which Auburn players be there. You'll have tight end Luke Deal, Elijah McAllister. You mentioned the Vandy transfer at linebacker. I think that says a lot what Hugh Freeze thinks about him coming to media days. And then Cameron Stutz, offensive line. So just next week, we know you're not going to hear a lot. It's going to be coach speak as we're used to seeing. But what would you like to hear or see out of Auburn from SEC Media Days next week?
I'd like to hear more about what the transfer portal guys have been up to. Not a bad haul the first time around, the spring window before, you and I got to talk about it. Not that bad as well. They added a quarterback, added a couple more receivers. They got some help on the defensive line. So just kind of looking more about how those transfers are transitioning with Auburn, and if we're going to see a lot more of them, or is there going to be more of a competition. Looking forward to hearing what Hugh Freeze has to say about that, and just his overall, thoughts on being back in the SEC. I know this is something that he's wanted for a while. I actually think one of the times that you and I talked towards the end of the year, right before Hugh Freeze was hired, how he talked about at Liberty that, we love it here in Lynchburg. It's a good little mountain town, but if I had to go somewhere in the SEC, it would be a small town. It wouldn't be in a big city. It's all quiet and all that. So, you knew he was talking about Auburn. So, I don't know if it's a dream job for him, but he's where he wants to be. Is it everything that he thought it would be? Is he pleased with the the transition and how well everyone else is doing? And just, his overall thoughts on if he personally thinks, Robbie Ashford has what it takes to be quarterback, or is it going to be Peyton Thorne? That's one thing he has not really shied away from is his thoughts on the quarterback situation. If Robbie Ashford is a dog and he can compete, he's going to get the job. But if not, Peyton Thorne's got to own up to it as well. Or, Holden Gardner, is he, even still in the race? So quarterbacks, transfer portal, and just his overall thoughts on being at Auburn, and if it's as great as he originally thought it was when he was contemplating taking the job when he was at Liberty.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see all that stuff. It's going to be, I'm ready for it because it always means that this football season is right around the corner.
Yeah, you get so excited, and then you still have to wait 2 months. And so that's the one thing we'll have to go through. But it will get here before you know it. Talking season is officially here, and before we know it, August will roll around. Camps will be starting, and who knows? We maybe have a few surprises to learn about on the roster, and not only at Auburn, but everywhere else. There's a quarterback situation going on at Alabama. Who's going to win that? I have no idea. We'd already talked about Georgia, their quarterback situation. Florida has Graham Mertz, but there's rumors that they're not really comfortable with him either. So there's a lot going on that we don't really know about, and maybe some of those storylines will become clearer by the time the calendar turns to August.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. A lot of quarterback stuff, and Taylor, it's always fun having you on here talk all things Auburn. I think this is the longest we've done a pod, but it's always great to have you on. You're the sole guest for this episode of the show, so you brought a lot of great insight and takes on Auburn. But if the listeners, viewers want to check you out, where can they find you?
You can check us out at auburnwire.usatoday.com. We're going through rankings of every position group, taking a look at several preseason publications going around. I know we've done a lot with Athlon Sports. We've done a lot with Lindy's. Phil Steele has also come out with some things. So we're just trying to compare and contrast where everyone sees Auburn. One of the big things we've learned now is that half the publications see Peyton Thorne winning the quarterback battle. The other half see Robbie Ashford winning the battle. What does, everybody think about Hugh Freeze? We're also going to be breaking down in the next couple of weeks about, who are some of the top players that Auburn's going to play this year, who are some of the top quarterbacks. So we're, of course, going to have all that info at auburnwire.usatoday.com. If you're on social media, you can search for us on Facebook at The Auburn Wire and on Twitter at The Auburn Wire as well. We've got, along with me, two other writers that are doing a wonderful job right now, and Daniel Locke and JD McCarthy. And they've got, of course, a lot of good stuff going on as well as we're leading you up to football season. So go check us out at the Auburn Wire on social media, whichever one you prefer. And of course, online at our physical website at auburnwire.usatoday.com.
All right, Taylor, sounds good. I appreciate the time and I look forward to talking again sometime down the road.
Hey, it was fun, Phillip. Thanks for having me on.